Hi, thank you for joining us. My name is Neal. This is my wife, Diane. We're coming to you today from the Family Collective to talk to you about the importance of your identity. And so we want to give you some pointers and how to walk through some of the issues around your identity.
Yes, yes. And one of the really great things about your identity and the hard things about your identity is it can wax and wane with what's going on with your life. You know, I feel really strong in who I am. I feel really secure in who I am. And I know who I am.
Right.
Or, you know, I feel like I've maybe taken some life hits and I'm kind of shrinking in you know, really what it was called to do and be. And there's actually a really interesting story that I would love to share with you.
Yeah.
That I feel like I've got some revelation on. And you may or may not know the story of King Solomon. And what's really interesting about King Solomon is that he grew up in a palace.
Yes.
He was, you know, he grew up royalty. You know, he knew who he was. He knew what his destiny was. He knew what he was called to do. And that's all great and special if you've had that kind of life. But if you're a normal person, that's not normally what you've lived. Yeah. And I think what was really interesting is that I feel like I was, you know, thinking about that story and processing that and understanding, you know, he had been given a choice to make a decision on what he wanted as a gift, a literal gift from God.
Right.
And what he chose was wisdom. And, you know, I questioned. I was like, wow, you know, if I was given that same choice, right, you know, would I choose wisdom? Because, man, if you could have all the resources in the whole world, you know, you could make some change. I was rationalizing this. And what I realized was, or what I feel like I understood was, is that because he had grown up in that palace, because his identity was solid, he knew who he was able to make the choice for others. You know, he was able to make the choice for his kingdom on how to rule his kingdom well. And I really think that's something that most of us get stuck in.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah. So
I think, you know, we're called to impact more lives than just our own. And it's so often the difficulty is to almost get over ourselves. And especially if we've gone through some amount of pain or rejection, as Diane has taught, or issues that maybe we're currently going through. And as I was thinking about our identity, I think, you know, we get our identity from a lot of different sources, both good or bad. And I want to maybe just share a couple with you. You know, oftentimes we get our identity from family. Here in the South, people put a lot of honor around what's your last name. And so people spend a lot of time saying, my identity is rooted in the generations of the McAllisters, whoever it might be. And so we attach a lot of significance to who our name is and how that flows. And certainly we see that in other circumstances or settings as well. You know, we might get our identity from our job or our profession. Yeah. I've done that along the way in my life where, you know, our sense of worth, our sense of belonging, our sense of security can be all tied up into our employer. And that might be nice, but if something rocks that identity or that employer situation, we might lose our job. It might be a situation where things change, and now all of a sudden our identity is at a crisis. And I've been through that, where everything I thought I was valued as a human being can be lost in a moment because we put too much weight in our profession. And I think that's very common, especially for those of us in the professions that we have. A third thing that I want to talk about is we can get our identity wrapped up in our children. And as they grow and get older, when they're young, we become absorbed in, they took a step, or they did this today, and that's great. But as they get older, they begin to have a life of their own. And it's quite natural for them to spend less time with mom and dad. And our 3 children are all a lot older, and they don't always necessarily have the same context, and that's a great thing. But I think as parents, sometimes we can feel rejection almost in a very passive way because our kids begin to lead their own lives.
Yeah.
And so I think identity and where we get our identity, we need to examine, and probably to examine it even before we're impacted, because we've overweighted our identity in one category or another. And I know you've done a lot of teaching on that as well, because I think so often our scars go deepest in those areas where our identity is maybe misplaced, or we've had it for a long-standing setting. Yeah.
And I think one thing that maybe we want to talk about, later is, as a mother, my identity, was wrapped up in being a mother, and actually
and it's a great thing.
And it's a great thing. And as my young adults are, doing what they're supposed to be doing and leaving and having lives, it kind of leaves that empty hole. And it was a great place to kind of examine.
Yeah.
One of the things that Neal and I are going to be talking about, and I just kind of want to mention it here, we are going to be talking a little bit about identity and rejection and the hurt and the pain and the recovery of that. And we've written about that in a book that we wrote a couple years ago, and it's called Take Heart. It's by Neal and I, and we spent some time on restoring your identity, because when you get to that hole, or those holes in life, you need to kind of rise from those ashes and know who you are.
Yes.
And that took a walk.
Yeah.
It took a walk of faith. It took a walk of, restoration of self and restoration with others and
relationships.
Yeah. And so it's important, if that's something you're going through, this might help you.
Well, what I love, and as we were writing this book, we struggled over finding a title. And the title, Take Heart, is from John 16:33. And it says, in this world you will have struggle.
Yes.
We all have opportunity to go through some difficulty in life. And it might be different for each of us.
Yeah.
But in that verse, it says, take heart, for I, Jesus, has overcome the world. I don't have to take heart because I've gritted my teeth and made it through. I have to actually find my identity where it was supposed to be placed, in Him. And He's the overcomer. And as long as I hitch my identity to the right place, He's going to help me in that walk.
Yeah. So we want to thank you for being with us today, and Neal and Diane from the Family Collective. And please go to the website, thefamilycollective.co, for thousands of other resources and articles and YouTube videos and courses.
Yes.
We look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks for joining us.